Supervisor Jim Gillio.
Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I have the acknowledgement certificate of posting?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Just to let you know, we're going to go into closed session prior to starting the regular agenda. So if we're thinking roughly
45 minutes,
half an hour. So if you want to go grab something, go grab a cup of coffee or something to eat, be back in about a half an hour.
Close. Okay.
Barbara?
Closed session conference with labor negotiators, agency designated representatives Michael McDougall, Ray Espinoza, Edgar Nolasco, Stuart Patrick, Elvo Barosio, and Barbara Thompson, employee associations, organizations, institutions association, law enforcement management employees group, SEIU Local 521, Deputy Sheriff's Association, confidential employees, confidential management employees, appointing department heads and unrepresented employees pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. Was there any public comment?
You can sit here if you want. We'll go in the back.
transportation. It also allows us to qualify for state and federal matching funds. Sorry, I don't know what just happened. Okay. We have an average of $16 million annually anticipated to come in over the next 30 years, and Measure G requires annual audits, citizens oversight, and other taxpayer protections. The projects and priorities in the plan are divided into 3 tiers. Tier 1 is the Route 25 4-lane expressway project between Hollister and the Santa Clara County line. $241 million is set aside in Measure G for that. Tier 2 is maintaining local roads, repairing potholes, and improving traffic at $216 million set aside. I apologize, I don't know why this is advancing. This is going to make it difficult to give this presentation.
Any IT folks?
This is a PDF, yeah. Could you just give me a second? Sorry. Okay. And Tier 3 is mobility and more, and that's transit, pedestrian improvements, traffic flow, and administration and contingency at $27 million. So just to talk about COG, we're the Regional Transportation Planning Agency for the county. We will be administering Measure G, and our commitment is really to project delivery and delivering on the promises that we made to the voters. So we will be working with the state and federal governments to ensure maximum investments in our region and matching funds, coordinate with our local governments like San Benito County as well as Hollister and San Juan Bautista. I don't know what I'm going to do here, sorry. We want to efficiently address the needs that are outlined in the plan that was built with community input. So again, we need to make sure we're delivering on those promises to the voters who spent a lot of time with us, working with us to make sure we had the best plan possible. COG will be responsible for project and program management, and right now we are looking at outsourcing with a contract for on-call services to help us with that, and hopefully coordinating with the county as we do that. And of course, we're also responsible for convening a Measure G Citizens Oversight Committee that will really be responsible for fiscal review and making sure the funds are being spent correctly. So an update on that, if I could give one, if that's okay, is that we were recruiting for the Oversight Committee sort of in March and April. Applications were due April 30th. It's an 11-member committee, and there are certain requirements for how the different representations that we need. So we need geographic representation as well as certain categories. So we received about 18 applications, but unfortunately we don't have the exact geographic representation and all the categories filled. So we've done some staff analysis. The COG board will be discussing this on Thursday at their meeting and giving us some direction about whether we want to recruit some more or make some adjustments. So that'll be a big discussion at the COG meeting on Thursday at 3 p.m.
Where is that held, just so people know?
Here at the Board of Supervisors.
So
chambers.
this Thursday,
Thursday at
3 p.m. at the board.
Yes, and the agenda is on the COG website, sanbenitocog.org. There's a long staff report in there that gives a lot of this information as well, and folks are welcome to look at that. But the goal is to definitely have that established by summer. The committee, Measure G requires that we have the committee established before we expend any funds. And we don't have any Measure G funds right now, so certainly not making any expenditures. And I'll talk about more what our timeline is like. But we are on track as far as what is required in the measure that was approved by the voters. So again, just kind of the basics of how this works. We don't have it, again, we don't have the Measure G funds yet. The retailers are currently collecting the tax, sending those funds up to the state. The state is going to review that and make distributions to COG, which we're anticipating our first distribution in July coming to COG. And then COG will distribute funding to the local governments as well as to our other projects in the program. So just some important considerations. I kind of want to manage expectations a little bit and kind of set the stage of, kind of how we're working through this. The tax was not effective until April 1. We will not receive funds before July 2019, no sooner than that. Right now, COG, our big focus is developing a strategic funding and implementation plan, and the goal is to have that adoption in fall of 2019 prior to distributing funds. Again, the Citizens Oversight Committee will be established no later than this summer, and matching funds will not be available until winter, spring of 2020. So that's really important to COG, especially as we're looking at our Highway 25 project. It also affects the local jurisdictions who are eligible for those matching funds. So it's important to kind of be strategic about when we want to start projects and start spending the funding. So our strategic plan for success, we want to provide the information needed to deliver projects to the public as promised. So we need good financial information, we need good timelines, information about matching funds, and project management capability. So we want to be efficient with our use of the taxpayer dollars, have thoughtful decision making, and deliver projects as quickly as we can. So this strategic plan will be prepared by COG. We'll have consultant support, and we're working with K&N Public Finance. So the good news is you're also a client of theirs, so they're familiar with both of our strategy or our structures. We'll also be consulting with city and county staff as we develop that. It will be reviewed by the Oversight Committee prior to COG adoption, and then it'll be adopted by the COG board. So ultimately, the policy decision lies with COG, but you do have representation on that board, of course, as well as Hollister and San Juan Bautista. So with that, I can go into the local roads funding piece now. So I am monitoring the California Transportation Commission's development. They're developing guidelines for the matching funds. So there are some issues that could affect us as far as how they break down the funding into formula shares or competitive pots. So we're going up to Sacramento and making sure we're on top of that to advocate for what will be best for San Benito County. But cities and counties also have to meet Measure G requirements to get these funds. So the formula, again, $216 million total to Tier 2. 47.5% going to Hollister and the county, and then 5% to San Juan Bautista. So I do have some information on your apportionments, but some considerations. This was information from a cash flow model that was built in summer 2018 by K&N Public Finance. We did update a little bit in March 2019. We are working with K&N. We'll have additional updates and funding estimates that we'll complete in spring and summer for inclusion in our strategic plan. The assumptions for funding are we had two different ways to look at it, whether it's pay as you go or are we going to bond for the Highway 25 project. So these estimates are based on if we were to bond for the Highway 25 project, if COG were to issue bonds. So these are your first 5 years of funding for San Benito County only from 2020 to 2024. So those are dollars and thousands, so it's $1.818 million in fiscal year 2020. And again, this is just for planning purposes. These numbers will be updated, and I'm working with your staff to make sure that you get all the information that you need. Local agencies do have some strict responsibilities that are set forth in Measure G, again, for these taxpayer protections that we wanted to keep in place. You're required to maintain your pavement management program and select projects kind of based on how that program that you develop works for the county. You also have to maintain your participation in the Regional Traffic Impact Mitigation Fee Program. We will be entering into a tax sharing agreement, which is really going to be a funding agreement. It'll set forth all the roles and responsibilities for both COG and the county to ensure that you're using the funds the way Measure G intended, and we make sure we have some oversight. There's a requirement for maintenance of effort, so you have to maintain your existing commitment of funding to local roads. No general fund expenditures allowed, of course, under Measure G. This all needs to go to local road maintenance or improvements. And then the Citizens Oversight Committee, of course, will be looking at the expenditures that the county does in addition to COG's expenditures. So kind of just to reiterate our timeline, right now I think I've covered it early in the presentation, but right now we're just working on all these pieces in our strategic plan, making sure we have good information. Again, we'll be getting our first payments in July, and then the winter 2020 is when the matching funds become available. So just some conclusions. I think these are the best practices, and this is what we really should be working towards, and this is what I'm working on at COG. We need to coordinate with local agencies so we make sure we're successful with implementation, coordinate with the state on those matching funds. That's really important and can really maximize our impact for the community. Our strategic financial planning is really going to provide the framework for us. So we look forward to working with your staff to develop that strategic plan. And then public outreach and communication with a clear and consistent message. So that's our goal at COG. And so if you need more information, our website, and we keep it updated with project updates, funding information, and then our COG meeting agendas always have really detailed information about where we're at. And our board meets the third Thursday at 3 p.m. here at the board chambers.
When we're looking at the oversight committee of 11 individuals,
Yes.
do we know what we're missing at this point in time? The reason I ask is we have, along with myself, 4 other members up here that we may want to talk to our constituents and push them and get them involved in this, because it is coming from their sales tax dollars. So we need more participation. And it passed, of course, or we wouldn't be talking about it. But we need input and we need help from our community members. And I think this is a way to really, instead of talking about it, helping us come up with a plan. So if any of the supervisors up here know anyone that would like to be involved in that, please let them know.
Yeah, some of the categories, I know we are missing a representative, for example, from education. So we didn't have anyone submit an application that was in the education field. If you know someone who maybe would fit into that category and you want to let them know, that'd be great. We also need a representative that resides in the city of San Juan Bautista. That's a requirement in the measure. So I did not receive an application from a San Juan resident. So we definitely want to reach out to them. And then I think the majority of applicants were from Supervisor Gilio's district, I will say. So if you guys want to reach out to your constituents, that would be great as well. Terrific.
Been reaching out.
Right.
He's on the board now.
So the application is still on the COG website. Again, it's going to COG on Thursday, so I do need a little, we need to make some decisions at the COG level first. But if folks want to take a look, they're welcome to.
Yeah, thank you, Mary, for a really outstanding report. I think that kind of gives us a clear picture of, Measure G, and it takes some time to put all of this together. And I think one of the most important things that we're working at COG is, project management and delivery and shoring that up. I think that's even more so critical to develop those strategies on how we figure out what our first projects are going to be and how we're deliver it. That more so even than having the oversight committee. In fact, the oversight committee kind of watches how we spend the money. But that passing Measure G was kind of the first step down a long road of where we need to go with fixing our roads and improving traffic circulation. And what's important to the county at this point in time is to understand what is the revenue stream to the county from Measure G, what the impacts are with SB1 and those matching funds, and how we could coordinate the other funds that we historically have for road maintenance, as well as maybe other pots of money that's available. So hopefully we are able to, kind of get good advice and coordinate with our partners, the 2 cities and the county, and spending the money as efficiently as we possibly can. I think these updates are be very important on an ongoing schedule.
And just to reiterate, our COG representatives here at the board level are Supervisor Gilio and Supervisor Botello. Peter, anything?
So I just 2 things. One thing that mic's not on. 2 things. One is you mentioned that we had an education person that's missing in San Juan Bautista, and the rest of them are from Supervisor Gilio's district that are missing for the COC committee.
Let me clarify. Sorry. So those are just 2 that I just off the top of my head I know I could mention. We have. We have a bunch of different categories. So I think Agriculture is maybe also one that wasn't fully represented as well. The majority of the applicants were from District 4. I think we have just one applicant from District 3 and maybe just one from District 1 as well. So out of the 18, and then a few from 5 and a few from 2. So there's a matrix if you'd like to look, or I'm happy to send it maybe through Ray to you. You can take a look at the coverage that we have, and then if you'd like to see that.
Please. Yeah, and the reason why I ask is, to me, I think a big element of it is just the public understanding of this process, because I know that a lot of folks think that once it got passed that the monies were there and we were ready to fix the roads. So even for the sake of a good dialogue with the public, I think it'd be good. And when I think of the Oversight Committee, I think that's a good opportunity, even for them to not only know this process, but then be able to share it with the public.
Yeah, almost like ambassadors of the program, for sure.
Thank you, Mary.
Supervisor Dela Cruz, anything?
No, my only concern was exactly what Supervisor Peter said, is I'd like to see the makeup of that committee and see if us and supervisors go into our district to make sure we get a fair representation of the entire community. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Gilou?
I just want to take a minute to thank Mary for coming down here, Director Gilbert, and providing an update, and also let you guys all know that one of the critical components of this is state match funding, and we're working very hard on that. I'll be up at CalCog at the end of the month in Sacramento, making sure we're the squeaky wheel and people know where we're at and that we have a need for funding. I can tell you that all the way up to the Deputy Director of the CTC, who's the one who provides Mitch, who provides the funding to Caltrans, he's very familiar with the 25 project. He knows Mary very well. I was very happy to see the first time I met Mitch. He's, oh yeah, 25, that's yours, right? Yeah, absolutely. We're very aware of our project, and I do believe that we are getting through to them to get that matching funds. The more matching funds we get, the more ability we have to change the numbers that you saw up there and do more work on our local roadways. And then the drum I bang every time I get the opportunity to, is probably not exactly lined up here, but is our SB1 funding. It's definitely not Measure G, obviously, but it's going to help us with all the projects we're doing, formula versus competitive. And I keep saying this over and over because the big counties want to change to a formula grant as opposed to a competitive grant award. Right now it's about 50-50 divided up, and the competitive favors small counties. So I want all of us to be aware of that, and whenever you're at your meetings in Sacramento, RCRC, for Supervisor Botello, please make sure that if you ever hear that formula discussion come up about SB1, we want it to stay status quo the way it is. We don't want to see any changes so we can get as much money to our county as possible. Thank you, Director Gilbert.
I'm done. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Takes us to our next item.
Mr. Chair, can I add one comment to that, please?
Think about that.
All right.
Yes, you can.
It was with the apportionment slide. I just wanted to, if you don't mind going to that slide, I just wanted to highlight for the board the allocations set forth, and it also depends on what the COG board decides to move forward with regards to the allocations. I wanted to highlight that because this is kind of really pertains to our budget and kind of maybe not necessarily this year, but maybe at the tail end of this fiscal year and then the future years. So if the board decides to, the COG board decides to go in this direction where that COG will take this on at 2025, it depends, we'll have a gap in time. So I think both Supervisors Anthony Botello and Supervisors Jim Giglio hit the nail on the head that we'll have to look at different ways to fund some of these projects. If we decide to bond or we decide to do something in a larger scale, we'll have to have some incoming funding to address the servicing of the bond with years 2025 through maybe 2010 or 2020 or 2030, 2035. Just depends on when we would start seeing some more fundings come back. So I just want to make sure the board was clear with that.
Mr. Chairman, that kind of brings back a thought that I wanted to ask the director. Because some projects kind of move ahead of other projects, and jurisdictions might not be able to utilize some funding early, maybe need it more late. Of course, 25 is a little bit later. That could change with the 152 realignment and maybe some state matching funds, whatever we're working on. But in the past, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mary, we would move some money forward to a jurisdiction kind of ahead of a schedule or a set percentage.
Right. So the way that our modeling was done by our financial advisors, we looked at, for lack of a better term, sort of bulking up the funding to the locals in the first years of the program, if we could, because there may be potential that when we're in the thick, basically, of where Highway 25 needs more money, there's a chance that then the locals would receive either no allocation in those years or a very small allocation in those years. And that's what Ray is referring to is, so if COG's going to make a decision to do that, that is going to affect, how the county, how you can manage your finances and whether or not you can bond against your funds. If you're going to have a gap of not getting any money, I think your bonding might be a little difficult. So that's definitely something that COG will take under consideration. It affects the cities as well. So when we're developing our strategic plan, we'll look at that. We'll look at what our opportunities are. So we'll be doing a 5-year plan, but it's going to be updated, sort of every 2 years. So we'll consistently be checking back on that to make sure we want to maximize the investments that we can make. I mean, whether it's maximizing it on the local roads and then, or maximizing it on Highway 25, whatever we can do to best serve the community.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's really important that we have very good coordination with our partners and through other agencies, and as well as a good project management coordination too with all the projects that need to take place.
And COG does have a technical advisory committee, so your staff has representation there as well as the other locals. So, we make sure that we're checking in consistently on those types of coordination opportunities as well.
Thank you, ma'am. Good now, Ray? The next presentation, I know you were anxiously awaiting there, Mr. Joe Paul, is the County Clerk, Auditor, Recorder Elections presentation on the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report.
Good morning, Chair, Board of Supervisors.
Just out of curiosity, how many years have you been the Auditor, Recorder?
Well, I was elected in 2006.
2006?
So this is now my 13th year.
Wow.
So, as is our custom during budget preparations, I work closely with the CAO's office to provide information associated with, the county fiscal information, especially in preparation of the budget. And one of the items that we bring up annually is the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, the CAFR. That's the county's, basically its statement as of June 30th, 2018, what the fiscal activities of the county were, and basically, how we fared. And as a little bit different this year, in that, as is our responsibility as department heads to ensure that we are grooming individuals in our office to, step up to the plate and take on more responsibility, who are basically going to be the future leaders in the county. I've asked our Assistant Auditor Controller, Leanne Godinez, to actually prepare this report and to, provide this presentation to the board really in our own words. And so I'm here to introduce Leanne to do that.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. Like Joe Paul mentioned, my name is Leanne Godinez. I'm the Assistant Auditor Controller for the County of San Benito. So this morning I'll be giving a summary level presentation on the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. A soft copy of the county's fiscal year 17-18 CAFR was provided with this morning's agenda. Today I'll be discussing what occurs prior to the preparation of the CAFR, sections and components of the CAFR, as well as some highlights from 17-18, and what we have scheduled going forward for the 18-19 close. Departments are responsible for recording and recording revenues and expenditures into our financial system on a day-to-day basis. The auditor's office relies on information that's provided to us from the departments to ensure that transactions are recorded in the appropriate fiscal year and that they are classified correctly. During the months of June and September every year, the auditor's office dedicates additional time and resources to assist departments in ensuring that the transactions are recorded in the appropriate reporting period. We are simultaneously, during these 4 months, processing revenues and expenditures for 2 fiscal years. After transactions of the departments are classified and recorded in the appropriate reporting periods, we then begin posting we then begin posting entries that convert our financial information from a modified accrual basis to a full accrual basis. The CAFR is comprised of 3 sections: the introduction section, the financial section, and the statistical section. Each section includes multiple components which are listed here. In addition to the CAFR, the county is required to prepare a schedule of expenditures of federal awards. The CFA, as it's referred to, reports total federal dollars expensed for the fiscal year. Each department that receives federal awards is required to prepare their own departmental CFA, which is then submitted to the auditor's office. We review and reconcile the information to our general ledger, and then once that's completed, we prepare a county-wide CFA that's submitted to the external auditors. The basic financial statements include the government-wide and fund financial statements. The governmental funds are reported on a modified accrual basis, meaning that we recognize revenues in the period they become available and measurable, and expenditures are reported in the period in which the associated liabilities incurred. The government-wide is reported on a full accrual basis, meaning that all short-term and long-term liabilities and assets are reported, as well as all revenues that were earned and expenditures that were incurred in the period. The county submitted the CAFR and single audit report to the California State Controller's Office and the Federal Audit Clearinghouse on March 29, 2019. The external auditors issued an unmodified opinion for the county's fiscal year 17-18 CAFR, meaning that our financial statements were fairly presented and that they were prepared in accordance to generally accepted accounting principles. So this slide shows a summary level of our governmental fund revenues by classification, as well as our expenditures by function. These tables are included as part of the management discussion and analysis of the CAFR, the MD&A. And this shows a 2-year comparison. I'll be highlighting in the next few slides some of the major changes that occurred. So aid from other governments increased approximately by $12 million from fiscal year ending 2017 to 2018. $5.6 million of that was due to state funding that we received for the jail construction. Capital outlay expenditures increased by approximately $9.4 million, 8.4 of which were again due to the jail construction. Overall, our governmental funds combined for an increase to fund balance of $7.1 million. So this is a graph that shows the information from the last slide just more of a comparative of the last 5 years for our revenues, total governmental revenues. And this shows our expenditures by function over the past 5 years. So highlighting a little bit on the general fund specifically, our taxes increased approximately by $5 million. 2.5, half of that was due to a one-time payment that the county received for in lieu of sales tax. Operating expenditures, so non-capital, increased by $1.9 million in general government and $1.1 in public protection. And those were primarily due to contracts for services. On this slide, I present the last 3 fiscal years for the general fund, both revenues and expenditures. In the last 3 years, we've estimated about a $1.5 million increase to fund balance. And this shows over the past 5 years how general fund balance has changed. So I wanted to touch a little bit on what each of these categories contains. The non-spendable includes all the prepaid expenditures for that fiscal year, for each corresponding fiscal year. Restricted includes all collections that we would have made per government code. Committed fund balance includes the $3 million that was transferred to PARS for future pension obligations. Assigned fund balance includes monies held at Trindle for our self-insurance, as well as a $2 million assignment for future capital improvement projects. This slide represents all total governmental fund balances. And again, this would include the general fund and some additional amounts that are included in the governmental slides that wouldn't necessarily be included in the general fund are state and federal funding in the restricted category, and impact fee revenues in the committed category. So looking ahead to fiscal year end 2019, the Auditor's Office has distributed fiscal year end deadlines to county departments. The last day to make purchases for fiscal year 18-19 is May 17th. Departments and other agencies have until September 30th to finalize all general ledger transactions for fiscal year 18-19. And we're estimating to have the first draft of the CAFR completed by November 15th. So one thing that I wanted to mention is that the county CAFR is considered incomplete until we have the information from the first 5 San Benito. CLA will be coming to perform their field work audit on December 7th, the week of December 2nd, and that's 1 month earlier than the previous fiscal year. So we'll work closely with the departments to ensure that we meet these deadlines. We start really early working with them, making sure that everything's getting completed and entered into the system. So we're hoping to be able to meet these target dates. And that's it.
Mr. Joe Paul, anything to add?
Thank you, Leon. The only thing I would add is both the CAFR and the single audit are on the county's website. So anyone who would wish to, take a look at them. The most pertinent part, I think, to private citizens is really the MD&A. That's where kind of like, here's the major changes that occurred, during the fiscal year. These are the things that of most interest to, I would say, to private citizens. So I really have nothing more to add other than that to the presentation.
Thank you very much. Questions from the board? Supervisor Botello?
Yeah, I have a good couple of questions and a very good report. Congratulations, very nice job.
Thank you.
The first one, reading the auditor's report, I guess first five did their auditing through another auditor, and so what you're saying is that our auditing is not complete until we get more information from first five, even though in the audit itself it said that they did an audit with another firm, I guess, and so that doesn't count, or?
Well, the first five do contract to have their audit services performed by a different firm, different from the county, and although that is the case, they issue their own opinion on the first five's financial statements.
Mm-hmm.
But what we require to be able to submit our own CAFR is to include the first five's financial information in our CAFR on the government-wide statements.
So the other opinion, we still need to do some more work on it, and I take it.
Well, I think the issue historically has been is that the other opinion has been a qualified opinion
Mm-hmm.
associated with pension and OPEB. And so that's that issue. So, you know, we include the information in our audit, but our external auditor looks at that audit and says, well, wait a minute, they got a qualified opinion. And it's, you know, it reflects on the county overall.
Okay. All right. And that's been the issue we've been discussing
and I
for
think,
the last
you know,
couple of months.
along with CAO and with Supervisor Hernandez, we've been having discussions with the first five in order to address that, you know, really that question. And the first five director has taken positive steps to beginning addressing those, basically those deficiencies.
And so, last question I have, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I guess the graphs were really good. I like graphs, and it appears that we're headed in a pretty good direction as far as fund balances and the breakdown on the different types of funds. Are we pretty much in kind of the parameters of where we need to be as a county of this size with the revenue and expenditures on each of these? Is there any red flags as the auditor that you
I think
have, or?
I think the county board has been very responsible, very prudent in ensuring that we're addressing our liabilities. You know, with in order to deal with the pension obligations, which every CalPERS agency, and really throughout the country, every agency that offers pension, basically, you know, a lifetime defined benefit, is dealing with the actuarially accrued liability, and your board has made very laudable taken very laudable actions by one, you have created a $3 million rainy day fund that has specific triggers that will allow for the use of those funds during some, you know, pretty, you know, dismal economic times. So you've been very responsible in that way, and we're, you know, in this budget, we talked about previously in the previous meeting, the OPEB obligation. We talked about we are still continuing to make the at least, you know, the actuarially determined contributions for OPEB because we're doing PAYGO. In addition to the PAYGO costs, we're making these contributions to the irrevocable trust that is held with CalPERS for the purposes of dealing with OPEB. So I think those are actions that are, you know, I think from a fiscal perspective, we're a county that has been very prudent and responsible in dealing with our fiscal obligations, and I think the board should be congratulated for taking those actions.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So if there's
Supervisor Hernandez.
So I sit on the first 5 board, and I've you know, as you mentioned, Joe, Paul, and I I really appreciate this report. It's funny because I struggle with the ultimately it seems like the inability for us to kind of be consistent, or not us as a county, but more because of the fact that we don't have that necessary information from first 5. And you know, with conversations, they are trying to move in the right direction, it sounds like. But I kind of wanted to see if, you know, I actually had Edgar, you know, our assistant CAO, go to one of my meetings, and I wanted to see if he can maybe give a little bit of feedback as to what those discrepancies are with first 5, because he sat in on that last meeting. He's comes from a background of understanding these things, so I wanted him there. So Edgar, if you can share maybe a little bit, I'd appreciate it.
Morning, Chair, members of the board. So I attended the meeting about 2 weeks ago with Supervisor Hernandez. A lot of the things they were discussing is removing themselves from our current CalPERS contract, and they're doing so by going to CalPERS and getting their own contract and getting out of our unfunded liability. They're going through the actuarial process, and staff here at the CAO's office will be helping them with that transition. As of right now, it is unclear if they'll be able to get a CalPERS contract as on their own. If they are not able to get a CalPERS contract, they're going to go ahead and have to buy out the liability from our current miscellaneous contract to get them off our books.
So yeah, my biggest goal was just to make sure that we had a pretty you know, equal understanding of where we're at, and ultimately why these issues have happened, and how do we move forward in addressing them. And I think Edgar kind of helped move that conversation in a positive direction, so I appreciate him being there.
Correct, Supervisor. So they're no longer part of the county, therefore this shouldn't be part of our CalPERS retirement contract, and they have unfunded liabilities currently with our CalPERS contract, and Joe Parr, Auditor Controller, has been billing them for those costs as it is, but going forward, it's probably in the best interest of the county we separate all ties with first 5.
Completely, yeah.
Anyone else on the board?
Well, if I could also, I'd like to add that the issue is not with current members. The issue is with retired annuitants. And as you know, as with retired annuitants, there's an unfunded actuarial liability associated with each member. And so because they were retired as part of our plan, those costs, because they're, those costs have to be billed out to the source agency of those employees, or retired annuitants now. And so that's why we continue to bill out those costs. And in order to do that buyout, that'll be an interesting exercise, because, you know, we know that CalPERS takes some very extremely conservative measures in order to, you know, do buyout calculations. So we'll see if those same standards are applied in this situation.
I forgot to say this last time too, but is there any public comment? Sorry about that, Mary. No public comment. Informational only. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe Paul.
Now that brings us to the third item. That is coming out of the CAO's office. Receive a presentation on the status of the 1920 recommended budget. You know, before we start this, I would like to really thank Stuart, Edgar, Dulce, Ray, and all the staff that has put this together. It seems like right when we're done with it, we start the next one. But I appreciate everything you've done. I came in, I think, on Saturday morning before a meeting, and who do I find? I find Stuart and Edgar here. So, I just appreciate everything you guys do. You go over and beyond, and we're lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Now let's get to work, okay?
So first, I just wanted to let the public and the board know, as I was adjusting some numbers last night, I didn't get the finalized version on the handouts that are out there. So I just wanted to let you know that this version is the correct version, and the only mistakes that were made were on the slide 3, which is this slide. The last two columns, the numbers were off, and then the last two columns of slide 5. And I just wanted to make that clear. And if anyone needs the updated version, I will definitely make sure that can be available. So as of right now, we have received all of the department requests, and the CAO's office will now be turning to working on the recommended budget. We wanted to outline all of the department requests and as they stand right now. This table right here represents our general fund department requested compared to last year's adopted. Some items that I wanted to specifically discuss were the total expenditure increases. We have increased requests for staffing in the general fund. The number here for salaries and benefits represents approximately a $1.7 million salary and benefit increase with new FTEs that were requested. That list was presented at the previous special budget meeting to your board. Additionally, I wanted to outline the transfers out. That has also increased. This is mainly representative of our transfers to our capital improvement fund. We have a lot of projects that we are going to be bringing to the board to make decisions on. One of those is a $2 million project for the courthouse renovations. And then there's some additional infrastructure building projects, including technology and our ERP system. This graph represents our general fund revenues. Analyzed over the last 6 years. Some of the big anomalies in fiscal year 17-18 and 16-17 were the projects for PV2. We did receive some one-time funding in those 2 years. In 17-18, sales tax actually increased about $1 million, and that was directly related to the PV2. We're expecting the sales tax to actually decrease back down to our normal amounts, which is approximately $2.1 million. Additionally, in 17-18, we received a one-time from PV2 for $2.5 million. That was included in that revenue in that year. And in 16-17, another one of the anomalies was the $2 million transfer from the teeter fund into the general fund. That also was a representation of one-time money, and that $2 million was assigned to that courthouse renovation project at that time by the board. Additionally, I just wanted to let the board know that we have changed the way that we are doing the vacancy budgeting and showing it publicly. This is mainly due to some things that we have kind of learned from our Standard & Poor presentation. Some of the things that we wanted to do was more recognize the salary savings in a manner that more aligns with the actual how we can more align to the CAFR and the auditing office when they look at the actuals. And so the vacancies was actually taken out of the revenue and actually put as a decrease to the expenditure side in the general fund. Again, in the new year, we have business license tax, which is new, that was passed by the voters. We are estimating about $650,000 for the business license tax. Property tax is up about $700,000 estimated. And then Prop 172 is also up about another $700,000. Some of the things that are not up, teeter fund, we normally have about a $600,000 transfer from our delinquency teeter fund. Talking to the auditor's office, the auditor Joe Paul doesn't believe that we're going to be able to meet that $600,000 in this current year due to our obligations with the teeter. It's going to be we're estimating closer to $300,000 being able to pull. Additionally, the sales tax from PV2 that has gone down. Additionally, looking at some of the other revenues that are not included this year, the vehicle license fees that normally went to 100% was going towards our sheriff department. That has been realigned to, as per board direction, to more align with the Cienega Road and the impacts that are going on over there. Additionally, talking to some of our departments, there's some revenues that are not expected this year. Deputy service charges are going to be down due to the PV2 project being completed. Additionally, the courthouse is down one sheriff's deputy, and that $100,000. It's about a $100,000 decrease to the estimated revenues. Additionally, I did notice, and I was going to go back to talk to some of our departments. The clerk elections recorder fees are down from the previous year as well. So I will get an update during the recommended budget to the board on that. So historically, we have never spent in these last few years what we've budgeted for. So I just want to make that clear that this is the $59.3 million looks almost double from the actuals that occurred in 17-18. This is just the department requested. This is the departments providing us their what would bring them to a high-functioning organization. And as we bring this back to the board, the county administrative office will be reviewing the requests, seeing what fits with our funding, and then bringing that to the board to make the final decisions on what we can do in the coming year. Some of the increases that are figured into the 19-20 expenditure increase. There were some staff that were approved mid-year. Recently, we had a probation officer that was approved, half grant funded, but half needs to be picked up by the general fund. Additionally, there were some other positions brought through. The assessor's office had new positions that would have increased the expenditures for salaries, but there was some offset with some grant funding as well for those positions. Additionally, the 1920 expenditures includes the total requested department requests for new positions. We have increases to the fire contract, about $700,000 from the previous year. Pension, $500,000. Our countywide insurance premiums have increased. The aid to indigents cost, talking to our HSA department, that needed to be changed as well for our estimates for the new year. There was new state mandates that changed the dollar amounts that that would be paid out per individual. Additionally, we have some increased legal costs that's directly related to negotiations and some other things. And then some of the things that we're working on as well that have been included are the classification study and some additional employee training requests. I just wanted to put this pie chart together to kind of give an overview of where the county spends the funding and what the request was for this year. As you can see, almost 50%, almost 50% is spent on public protection. The next largest chunk is general government services. That would be our admin office, HR, those kind of functions. And additionally, for 1920, I just wanted to outline where we're at with our other funds. And these are just the department requests for expenditures. The road fund has actually, I don't have it on here, but the road fund has actually decreased. We wanted to align that more with actual work that we will be completing in the new year. Additionally, the capital fund is also down because we're trying to align it again with actual expenditures in the year. The capital fund is within the other funds. Most of the departments have increased. So all of the other funds do have increases: general services and supplies, some salary, and just general increases in general. The fixed assets that we increases or requests that we have seen this year coming from the departments, and this is not a full list. The Ag Commissioner has a weights and measures truck that's about 30 years old. So I know she's brought that up to my attention. The Ag Extension is requesting a vehicle. Sheriffs. There's some new elections equipment that has been included in the request. Some of that is going to be offset by grant funding. IT has some fans that they need to include in our NOC system. Additionally, probation has some vehicle requests. RMA has general maintenance vehicle and equipment requests. So the general fund one-time fixed asset request is totaling about $1.3 million. Additionally, the road fund has some equipment requests. That represents the road funds portion. I do believe we're looking into using some impact fees from our equipment impact fee fund to offset. I believe the cost is already included in the equipment impact fee fund, so that cost should be the road funds portion. We're going to be finalizing that and seeing how we can use those funds.
Not to just looking at the road fund and looking at the equipment and vehicles, we really need to concentrate on them. Those are assets in theory, but we need to concentrate on human assets. We can have all the vehicles, we can have everything we need, but we need people. And that's where I think we need to, when you speak with the roads department, we need to really look at recruiting, more importantly, retaining our employees. And if that's, we think out of the box, we do something different, we have to provide that roads department with the people to complete the work. I speak to Jason at least, I would say weekly, if not maybe every other week, and that is the biggest issue out there is people. So I just want to make sure everything can look good with vehicles or any type of graders, but we need people. I just want to reiterate that. Mr. Anthony?
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of people. One of the things that I've been somewhat critical in the past over years is we buy equipment that we don't have operators to operate the equipment. It's a specialty, and then we train them, and then they're gone. And as we're kind of having a different view of, I hope we're looking at RMA a little differently as we recruit a new director real soon, and maybe it's a time to kind of look how we do things too. Let's not just go buy a $500,000 grader and not have it parked in the yard. Maybe some of this work could be contracted out. When you buy equipment, the wheels got to be turning. That's the only way it makes sense. And some of this stuff, I just kind of think that we purchase very expensive equipment that has high maintenance costs with expertise that you need, and then we don't use it as much as we should. We got these impact fees. We got to spend these impact fees on this, but I think we should be a whole lot more careful about it. And mowers. Yeah, well, we need mowers, but maybe there's a line of thinking that contract more of this kind of seasonal stuff out.
Supervisor Gilliam?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do definitely agree with both the Chair and Supervisor Patello. I took some time and I went out to the roads yard, and I probably talk with Jason pretty frequently. I have a lot of road mileage in District 4 that I'm working on trying to find some better solutions for. And I can tell you that there is a desperate need for some equipment, and I don't believe that their equipment requests are over the top or asking for crazy specialized equipment. Some of the equipment is being held together with the proverbial duct tape and baling wire, literally, and we need to update some of this equipment. And I think their requests are very frugal, to be frank with you. I don't think they're asking for anything out of the ordinary. One of the pieces of equipment that Supervisor Patello may be referring to, I'm not sure, and I did talk to our roads crew about this, is there's a nice asphalt grinder out there that grinds the asphalt, reconstitutes it, puts it back down. And it probably hasn't been getting used as much as it could be, and that's where I definitely agree with you guys. We need to bring on the staff so we can put that equipment to use. You guys authorized that a few years back, and I think we can definitely be getting more use out of that, and they want to get more use out of that. It's just more of a staffing issue because they're out there mowing, patching potholes, and they haven't had the time to get that piece of equipment out there. But some of the equipment, I think you'll see when you see the detail, is stuff that's desperately needed, frankly, I believe. Thank you.
Yeah, just for the record, I'm not contesting the, purchasing the vehicles. I'm just trying to make a case here that we need to really concentrate on people because, once again, we can have all the equipment in the world, but if you don't have, excuse my language, butts in the seat, we don't have any type of solution. Sorry about that, Stuart.
And I think some of that issue is the high turnover rate that Roads Fund does see with the roads crew. And I know that we're going to be working on some of those things. I know the board has discussed putting $500,000 out for potholing and some other things. So I know that hopefully soon here we're going to be tackling some of those issues. And then just to finalize, all other funds, there was approximately a $1.5 million request for just general equipment, computers, furniture. We are working on finalizing a recommendation for the Capital Improvement Fund to the board. I'm going to be meeting back up with our capital project manager to discuss some of these things, to see what's going to be tackled in the master plan and certain items that we can that we should wait to see what the master plan provides, and then bring a recommendation to your board. Some of the projects that will still be ongoing in 1920, the detention facility, that's getting finalized. There should probably be another July, I think, is when they're thinking that it's going to be finalized. And then we have some Vets Park renovations. The homeless shelter phase 3 with HSA is going to be worked on in 1920. The courthouse renovation is also back on the list, which those funds have been assigned by the board. There's about $2 million there. We have the master plan, some general administration building improvements, ERP and network upgrades, and then there's some various county renovation projects included on the list from the department's request. But we will be bringing back that list to the board during the budget hearings. Additionally, the Dulce helped me, our management analyst, with the community-based organization applications for this next year. We had received 5 applications from the following organizations. There was a total request of approximately $75,000, and this is outside of the additional $80,000 that we have a resolution with the adult CBOs. The $40,000 was the amount that we normally distribute through this application process. The committee met, I believe, and they have made they're going to be bringing some recommendations to the board soon here on the funding for the next coming year.
Mr. Chairman, do we have a projection as far as the percentage of what where we're be at as far as revenue obligations to that? Because I guess it's we traditionally use revenue out of the sales tax, a certain percentage, I think 6% of the sales tax.
That Mr. Chair, if I may. That is correct, but probably about 2 years ago, we actually made a correction based on the PV2 tax coming in. So we used a flat rate.
Okay.
That way, we didn't have an anomaly and actually pay more based on that tax coming in. So we still have it as a flat rate.
Okay, good. I forgot about that.
It's currently at 120,000. Obviously, if the board wishes to make any adjustments on that, they can make their recommendations. And we will bring that information at the recommended budget so we can look at it.
Okay, thank you.
Some of the other funding expenses that have been included in the 1920 budget was $150,000 for economic development. This is an increase from the previous year of $115,000. We have recognized that we're no longer doing allocation to the lobbyist as per the board's direction, and that is basically a wash in cost because we're moving those expenditures to economic development.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think last Monday the city council did approve their part of the economic development payment. Was that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So, once again, I want to go on the record saying I support this economic development. It's important. We talk about all these expenses. Well, in order to offset the expenses, there's only one way to really do it is, we don't want to cut things, but we want to increase our revenue. And you increase your revenue by sales tax revenue, by development agreements, and a lot of other different things. So it's time we really look at the sales part of it. Just like any private organization, we need to go after sales. So our sales are, once again, sales tax revenue. along with development agreements and bringing people into this this county of ours and have them spend their money here rather than in different cities or jurisdictions. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may add on to that, and I apologize to Supervisor De La Cruz in advance because I'm going to put you on the spot here. I apologize. I was at the City Council meeting when they discussed this, and one of the things that the City Council did with the Chamber of Commerce specifically is they agreed to fund for a certain amount, and then they wanted to have the Chamber come back with a plan for tourism development and so that the City Council could support that tourism development. I would suggest that we work on seeing if there's board consensus or approval to maybe perhaps split that, whatever that increased tourism cost is with the city, so that number one, the city of Hollister is represented, and also the county of San Benito, all of our wine regions and Pinnacles National Park, San Juan Bautista, you name it, all the great things that we have. I would support doing that, and I know originally I believe Supervisor De La Cruz, if we go back to the tape, was supporting more funding for the chamber, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. Does that sound about right, Supervisor, when we had that original discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
Do we need to put that on the agenda or just speak about it on the budget, or what's the protocol?
Well, that's what we're here for today, is to just to talk about these types of things. If you want to address this and put more funding towards these particular items, that's what we should do today, if we get the consensus, and then we'll put it on the agenda, and then you'll actually see that on the dry run on the 11th and then on the 23rd.
Yeah, let's ask for a consensus. I know Jaime's.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes.
just one other thing. I actually been, I've thought about this a lot, and I'm pretty passionate about it. So I support it. I'm actually going to be having a meeting with Aaron Johnson, the gentleman who pitched to us the EDC plan. I just, in the context of that conversation, I really want to understand a little bit more what the teeth were, so we can know exactly what the outcomes are and ultimately have stronger measurements for success. So my point is I support this. I would really like to have a pretty thorough conversation about the teeth of results, basically the expectations that we're going to get. It's going to be easier to measure what the outcomes are.
Well, for $150,000, Supervisor Hernandez, go at it. I mean, get everything you can from him. Educate yourself and educate him on what you want as deliverables, because it's a lot of money.
It is.
But we want to see a return. We want to see, of course, that revenue increase from $40 million to $60 million.
Yep. I appreciate that, Mr. Chair.
So, chamber consensus on the chamber, bringing up the dollars.
I'll listen.
Okay. I mean, we'll listen. Peter, you'll listen with the chamber also. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that date is again.
So my suggestion is that we have our team work with the city team and match what the city is planning to do for tourism. I think what the city asked, I think what happened was the city funded the chamber for $50,000 a year for the basic operating cost, and then they said, please, Michelle, the director of the chamber, bring back your tourism plan and what it's going to look like and what it's going to cost. And we want to fund that, but we just want to see what the plan is. And my suggestion is that we match whatever the city's doing with the chamber, to be fair.
So that would be at our next board meeting.
So what we can do is this is the plan. What I would do is we would go ahead and get authorization from you to budget for this. Obviously, we'll come back with an agreement. They will have all the concerns that you have at a later date. But this is just to allocate funding for our budget for that particular item. So that's what I would recommend doing. And then if we need to, we can pull it off down the road.
All right with everyone?
The only thing I'm still a little concerned about is, reason why I was supporting this expenditure is for economic development coordinator for the EDC. I think we can't lose sight of hiring somebody that is rock solid. I think that's, for me, is my priority.
Absolutely. 100%.
We got direction.
Sorry, Stuart. I always interrupt you.
So I did want to just highlight our liability obligations. Our retiree medical is approximately 2.7 million. This is total, all funds countywide. The unfunded PERS liability is about 5 million. That includes all both safety, PEPRA, and miscellaneous employees. And additionally, again, like in prior years, we have included the OPEB liability to pay that. The pay-go is the retiree medical portion that you see there, and the OPEB liability would be the pre-funding. We charge that out to departments based on their FTE count, and that's approximately what we have for that portion for this coming year. Additionally, I just wanted to bring up some of the road projects that we're anticipating and have included in the budget. The board and the CAO at previous meeting had discussed $500,000 potentially for doing potholing. And then I wanted to outline our SB1 anticipated revenues, about 1.7 million. Our general fund maintenance of effort requirement for that is about $179,000 in this 1920 fiscal year. So on this slide, I just wanted to highlight the timelines that are going to be coming up real quick here. And June 11th, we're going to have the proposed or recommended budget from the CAO's office complete, and we're going to make that. We're going to present that to your board, and then make that public. And then at June 24th, we will hold the budget hearings. At that point, we will go through all of the budget units and review them with the board. At that point, the board can provide the guidance to staff on any of the changes that the board would like to see changed. Also, the public at that time can make their comments on the budget. And we will continue the budget hearing through the week if we need to, but hopefully we can get through most of it in those 2 days. And then I did want to just talk about the process of the budget just a little bit, because our staff is kind of reviewing the process that we've been doing in the past to try to make some more to create more efficiency within our department as well as the auditor's department. The final and adopted budget is actually supposed to be submitted by the auditor's office by December 1st at the end of the year. And in order not to repeat work and do multiple things, we're looking into having the recommended budget as the approved budget by the board at the June 24th budget hearings. That will give the spending authority, and then that will start the 1920 year. The adopted budget doesn't actually need to be finalized by law until October 2nd, which will give us ample amount of time to get the auditor's the actual financials completed and into the budget, which is the final that needs to be submitted to the state controller's office. So instead of doing this process 3 times in the auditor's office, receiving the document with a week left to go in December, and then scrambling to finalize actuals in there while they're also working on the CAFR at the same time, I'm bringing this because I had to do that. And I think that this process will make it a lot easier. The recommended budget, we just need to make sure that all the language is included in the resolution, and that provides the hiring authority and the spending authority for both capital and FTEs. And the board has already done all of the changes through the budget hearing, so the board should be made aware of all of the positions that have been approved at that time. So.
Very, very good. I appreciate that.
Any other?
Mr. Chair, if I may add one comment. So when you look at that schedule there, June 11th, 24th, from now to the 11th, we will then be meeting with the departments to review the finalized version of their budget, and then bringing it back on the 11th. We'll be going through a mock run like we've done in years past.
What is the earliest time that you can recall that we, or I should say Jaime and Mr. Botello, is that we approved the budget?
A day and a half on a Tuesday.
Oh, well, last year we did it in a half a day.
Well, it was
quick.
No, there were things to do.
The CSA, we came back.
Oh, okay, yeah, but all in all, the last few years have been great. And you guys have been doing a great job. We appreciate the coordination. I appreciate these special meetings, kind of get the thought process going early, and a couple of suggestions.
Thank you.
I mean, we could shoot for Monday. That would be the record.
Shoot for Monday and see if we can get it done. Yes, sir.
Sorry, I forgot one last thing. At the previous special budget meeting, I discussed that we were trying to link to the budget to our the Gov website, so that people can just click on there and then go through and see the actuals. I told the board at that time that I didn't have the link finalized or fixed. I've contacted Workiva, and they've told me that they fixed the problem. So now it should work when we bring the recommended budget to the board.
That's good. But Mr. Chairman, I just remind all five of us, there's still a lot of work that the staff has to do to balance the budget. We're not in balance yet, and there's have to be some trimmings. So we got a lot of work to do yet. So it may.
Yeah.
So
Mr. Chair, Ray, you're going to present to the board a balanced budget or a recommendation to work around a budget
What day?
on the 24th?
No, that'd be a balanced budget. It
Would be a balanced budget.
Yeah, that's the plan. On the 11th, obviously, we're going to shoot for that as well, because the way what we have to do is we have to post for the actual hearings 10 days in advance. So it's immediately following the 11th. We're going to have to post. So the 11th is going to be really close to the final budget.
So when do the department heads come in and says, well, I beg the difference, I think we should.
Why are you saying that, Jaime? No, we're going to meet with them. We have to discuss the budget and discuss their items.
Okay.
From now, that's what I was explaining. From now till the 11th, we're going to sit down. We've actually sat down with a few already.
Okay.
Is there any public comment? Seeing none, I adjourn this meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn? Thanks.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Now I can adjourn.
Record number.
My
Record
best
time.
one, huh?
Record time. Yep.
When Anthony was chair.
Yeah.
When Anthony was chair, it was like this every time.
Every time. I'll get there.